the fifth page of the copy, on page test. And we were speaking about that there are inyonim that have to come, that are inyonim in Torah that are in Schalkus, but then there's a level also of Oitzer Bolum where everything is joined together, mixed in together, and to be able to, for anything to come down, it needs to, though it starts off from a level higher than say the Shtalshalos, higher than the Schalkus, similar to the level of Shem Yudke Vavke, that's the level of the halacha, and then it has to come down in his chalkus, and that's the mila when it comes down here into this world, when it comes down through from the achdus into the way of his chalkus. And that's also the difference we said between Torah and davening, that Torah is higher than the world, it comes Malmaila Mata. Tefillah comes from the world, it's coming Malmata Lamaila. And there are those whose avoida is primarily in Teirasi and Menasai. There's those whose avoida is in davening, but the davening is separate from their learning. And since the level of the Rajbi is a situation that has to do, and his avoida primarily has to do with the union of higher than Seder Ishtalshlis, or the level of beyond his chalk. In other words, the level of Torah. That's why he affected the Yeridas Keshamim. That's why the way how he brought down the rain was not through refining that which is below, but rather he brought down the rain through Hamshachim al Mailo Lamatam, and which has the advantage of not being limited according to how much the person down here did, whereas Tefillah has the Maila of it refines the one down here below, but it's still limited according to the person's particular level. Now, Nois Dalet, he's going to go on to explain what does it have to do with the with specifically that specific pasuk in Torah that the Rashbi said, Hine matoivim anoy. Nois Dalet, line 15, page test. According to what we learned up on our Yuban will be understood the reason Shamiris Torah, that saying of the Torah, which is Amshachim al Mailam, is about bringing down from above to below. The poil by Rab Shimei Yechai, that through it Rab Shimei Yechai affected and caused the descent of rain down here below. So specifically, what part of the Torah did he teach? Allah pasuk was on the pasuk Hine Matoiv Manoim. Behold, how good and how pleasant is Shevas Achim Gam Yocha, is the settling of brothers also together. Dafka specifically that pasuk. Hine B'chdei L'hamshich Lamata, so that it should be able to be drawn down below. We said before Yesh Tzoydach Sham Shochet Tavoi B'Yischalkus Dafka, that that Hamshach has to come down in a way of division. We also spoke about the difference in Yochid and Echad at the end of the previous ice. Yochid shows on a singularity and a oneness that's beyond division. The Echad is the way the oneness comes down into separation. Therefore, though every new Hamshacha that we bring down through Torah comes from Chachma and Bina. Chachma and Bina is the level of Seichel, the Makar of Torah. Torah's Machmasir, the Tiny is Bara. And the truth is, Torah comes from even a higher level than just Chachma. It's only, it says, it explains, it comes out from Chachma, but that means where it's revealed. But in its source, it's even higher, and even higher, the source of where the Amshach of Torah comes from. It comes me'arech va'atik, the two levels of Keser, ad lein sof mamish, to be able to draw down a new Hamshachem. It comes from the level of the Ein Sof. Just like in having children, we say it has to have a Hamshacha from the Ein Sof. So too the Hamshacha of Torah, a new Hamshacha, and a Hamshacha that changes the situation down here in this world, that is only through the power of the Ein Sof. Even though that's where it has to start from, that's where it has to be initiated from. Mikol Makom still and all. It still has to come down through the midas and malchus, shu'i and ischalchus, that's the idea of division. And so to top of the next page. Ugam in the latest on neshamas, also concerning the birth of neshamas, not just about Torah, not just about the level of the birth of neshamas, but any revelation of a new light, a new amshacha. Anytime you bring down something new, it has to come from a level of the Ein Sof higher than say the Vishkalshalos, but it cannot just jump from Ein Sof down to here. It needs to travel through the Seder Shtalshus, needs to go through the levels of the Ischalkus. This has to be through passing through the level of the Midas and Malchus, just like physically. In this world is the masculine and the feminine, the man and the woman, but it's still the power of the Ein Sof. But the power of the Ein Sof alone is not going to create a child. You need to have the union of a man and woman down here. The same thing, the spiritual realms. It's not just enough to have the Ein Sof. It has to come through the masculine and feminine, the level of Midas and Malchus. And this, all that we just now spoke about, how it comes from Chochmah Bina, then it has to go down to Midas and Malchus. This whole idea of the Seder Shtalshus is hinted in this pasuk of behold how good and how pleasant it is when brothers sit together. The Shavas Achim, the sitting of the brothers, it's referring to the levels of the level of Midas and Malchus. It says there's two levels. There's a level of Reim, there's a level of friend, beloveds. That's the level of Chochmah Bina. And Achim, brothers or siblings, that's the level of Midas and Malchus. Because just like Chochmah Bina is considered father and mother, so to Midas and Malchus is son and daughter, the sibling. So the same thing, Zah and Malchus are siblings. They're Shavas Achim Gam Yocha. Avol, that's not where it starts. First, it starts Matoiv Manoim. Avol Amshachim B'chinas Toiv Noim. The Amshach is from Toiv Noim Shu'in Abba V'Im. It's the level of Chochmah Bina. Brought down in other Mamorim that Matoiv, the level of Ma, has to do with Chochmah. And also Toiv. Toiv is also has to do with Chochmah. I think it's also connected to the fact that when the Yocheved saw her, Moshe Rabbeinu, he also said, by Vateros ki Toiv, because Toiv has to do with Chochmah. That was a level of Moshe Rabbeinu. In the Maim Shisi, we took him from the level of Chochmah. And Noim is the level of delight, pleasure, which pleasure is really connected to Bina. It says Bina has to do with the level of Atik, because when a person explains and clarifies, that's when he has the true pleasure from the idea. So Toiv and Noim is Chochmah Bina. And then it has to be Shavas Achim, it has to be the brothers, because you cannot just come from Chochmah Bina, like we said before. It has to come down to this Chalkus of Midas and Malchus. One of the things we also asked at the beginning of the Maimer is why mention Rabbi Yossi? That's also the connection with Rabbi Yossi specifically. The Fisha Rabbi Yossi Bechinas HaMalchus. Rabbi Yossi is the level of Malchus. What's the Yossi have to do with the level of Malchus? Ki Yossi begematria Elikim. Aleph Lamed Hey Yud Mem. That's a numerical equivalent of, I believe, 86, and that's also the exact equivalent of Yossi. Samach is 60, 2 Yuds is 80, Vav is 6. So you have Kedisa b'Sanhedrin, like it's brought down the Gemara Sanhedrin. Over there in Gemara Sanhedrin, it doesn't explicitly say that it's a level of Gematria. But the Rashi explains that when there's an expression, the Gemara, that speaks about when a person, Has B'Shalom, curses Hashem. We just recently had this in Mekalil in the Parsha. He curses Hashem. So the Eidim use the whole time when they speak about it, when the witnesses give the testimony, so they did not use Hashem's name. In other words, they did not say that so and so said, and they'll say Hashem's name and say the curse on Hashem's name. But rather, they use a nickname for Hashem. What is the nickname for Hashem that they use? Yaki Yosi is Yosi. They say, instead of using Hashem's name, they replace it with the name Yosi. So Rashi explains, of all things, why does the Gemara use the expression of Yosi? Why, why do you say Pliny, whatever, some other blank, fill in the blank type of thing? Why is it specifically, does the Gemara use the term Yosi? Because Yosi is made up of 4 letters, just like Hashem's name is made up of 4 letters. And then Rashi also says, Yosi is the same cheshbon, the same gematria as the name Elokim. Therefore, he used the term Yosi until when the actual final stage of the trial comes, when then the Eidim actually have to say exactly what was said, not just use the nickname. But the point is that we see that Yosi has to do with Shem Elokim, and because the Gematria, and we know the sphere of Elokim has to do with the level of Malchus. That's why, as was only explained, Rabbi Yosi is the one associated with this mime. Back to line 12. Since Yosi is only the numerical equivalent of the name Elokim, therefore, it's not identical to Elokim. Gematria indicates a much lower level. One like explained in Tanya that he speaks over there. The Asarim Amaris is responsible for all creation, even though there are many more creations in the world than there is mentioned explicitly in the Asarim Amaris. But the means of there's different types of gematrias and other types of ways of switching letters. But the Alter Rebbe explains gematrias hemrach cheshbon ha'osis. Since a gematria is only the numerical equivalent of the letters, that means that it's less than the word itself. So things that are explicit in the Asar Amoris have greater power and energy from Hashem, and things that are only derived by the way of gematrias, that's only the numerical part of the letters. It has nothing to do with the meaning and so on and so forth. So therefore, the fact that Yosi is the numerical equivalent of Shem Elokim, that means it's not Shem Elokim itself. That's already hinted in Sheves Achim. Achim, we said, is Zoh and Malchus. Rather, Amar Rabbi Yosi shows on Shem Elokim the way it comes down lower in a gematria. Line 15, this indicates I'm drawing down very below in the worlds of Bri Yitzirasi. Why does it say Gam? The emphasis over here, the Rebbe is saying Achim and Gam. The word Gam indicates also. It's to add more to the picture. That it also comes, and it's trying to include the worlds of beyond that are below the level of Malchus of Atzilus. But like we said before, Malchus of Atzilus is hinted in the world of the Malchus of Atzilus is hinted in Achim. So therefore, the Gam Yochad comes to hint the way it comes down into Biyah. The Rebbe adds, Ki Achim begamin miutim. The Chazal say that when it says Ach in a pasuk, or it says Gam in a pasuk, it comes to limit or exclude certain details. And therefore, in the similar vein over here, that we are excluding the world of Atzilus. We are showing that it is Gam Yochad, meaning something a little less less than what it was before. Messiah Yochad. After the Gam, he concludes Yochad. But we have already going as Rabbi Yossi and Hinamatar Manoim, Shabasachim Gam. What does the Yochad add? So top of the next page, Yud Aleph, he explains that which is coming down is coming from the level of the Yechidei Shaloylam, like we spoke about. The level of Yachid is way higher. It's the level that is beyond any type of scholars. Because we're bringing down from the Yochad, from the level that's beyond any limitations, the levels of the highest level, the singular one level of the world. Or he was able to affect through this the descent of rain down here below. Any questions? Let's continue. We asked that in the beginning of the Maimer that we have a lot of details about the story that the students first came to him, and then he said the Torah. What was the idea that first the Talmidim came to Rashbi? Yes, after we could say possibly that the reason why it's the Talmidim first had to come, and even more so that the Zohar had to relate that the Talmidim came. In other words, this was a significant part of the event that somehow contributed to it. That the Talmidim telling the Rashbi that the world needs rain, it's similar to the idea of davening. Davening, we said, is something that's evoked and comes from below to above. So the Talmidim approaching the Rashbi and saying, the world needs rain, that was the elevation from below to above. That was a preface before the Torah was being said by the Rashbi. The Rashbi didn't just say, on it, and that was enough. But first, there was the Talmidim that did a similar thing to davening by going to the Rashbi first and asking from him. Through the idea of davening that precedes Torah. We know there's a concept of davening that must precede the Torah. As it says, first of all, there's the idea before studying Torah, a person needs to make a bracha on Torah, a person cannot learn Torah before he says the brachas of the Torah in the morning. And so that's one aspect and component of tefillah before Torah that the Talmidim did through approaching Rabbi Rashbi to ask him for the rain. Another thing that we find about it is Abu bin Yamin said that he always made sure that tefillasi smuchal mitasi, that my davening should be close to my bed, meaning I didn't go learn before I davened, because davening was right after his sleep, because davening had to precede Torah learning. Through having the davening before the Torah learning, despite the fact that we said that the Torah learning is Maila and davening is from below to above. We said that davening is from below to above is limited according to the level of the below. That's only if you have davening alone. Torah that follows the davening, but since it's from above to below, so then through that is assured that the Torah that came after it was so much higher. So even though Torah in general we said is the level Mamayla without the limitations of the world and the person that did it, but when it follows davening, it's even greater. Let's look on the right side of the page, line 26 in the commentary. Explain concerning this idea of first davening and then learning Torah. So the Rebbe explains in the Torah, the advantage and quality of Torah learning after davening. It's so much greater than the Torah prior to davening, if the time of davening has already arrived. Shebetfila dechol yoim hu bechinas hayichud zun, that the davening every day, that's the union of Zeir Ampin and Nukve Zayin Malchus, the Midas and Malchus, Shehem bechinas Torah shebeksav Torah shemalpeh, that this corresponds also to the written Torah and the oral Torah. Through the prefacing, the level of B'chol Moedecha, that's in Kriya Shema, v'yichud zeh miskadish b'chol yom, and this union of the spheres is renewed daily. Ki b'chol yom nasa adam berich hadasha, because every day a person becomes a new creature. Tzarechli is halos man, there has to be therefore every day a new isarus d'lasata, a new ascent from below. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe says over there, if the time of davening comes and the person doesn't daven, rather he is learning instead, therefore the Torah study that he's learning, it's only from that which falls off of the Chachma of above. And Nimshach top of the column on the left side of the page, line 38. That comes down, that is just what falls on its own, just like when something falls of its tree on its own, the same thing, this is something that comes automatically from it, from the Chachma into the written Torah and into the oral Torah. Through B'chol Me'idecha, a person is breaking out of his boundaries, out of his limitations. That touches and reaches the levels that are higher than, say, the Ishtalshalos, and he makes the union above of the Ein Sof with the world. So then, once he creates that union above from the Ein Sof of the world, in Cain, the involvement in Torah that follows this. Yes, v'nimshach b'zegilu chacham shel ma'ila mamish lo nevus levad. So then, what comes down is Hashem's actual chachma, not just what happened to fall off. Okay, back to the text inside the Maimon itself, line 11. We could add to this that both components of Torah and Tefillah are found by Rabbi Shimon Yochai himself. Prior to this, it came out that Rabbi Shimon supplied the Milmai Lamata of Torah, and by the Talmidim coming to Rabbi Shimon Yochai and asking him, so that was the Tefillah component that's necessary to precede the Torah. Now the Rebbe is going to say that in the Rabbi Shimon Yochai himself, he incorporated both levels of Torah and Tefillah. How is that? These are two explanations in what Reb Shimon ben Yochai said, brought down the Zohar, that I am only a sign, I am only an indication for above. One meaning and point in the idea of Reb Shimon ben Yochai saying a sign, one indicates Rashbi's bittul. He is not a separate entity whatsoever. His entire being is only a sign for the existence of above. Just like you have a signpost that says this is a Chabad house, this is a shul, or this is, this particular street, or this is a sign to go to a particular town or city. The sign is nothing. The sign is completely nullified to that particular building, city, address, etc. It's only an indicator. So too, the Rashbi was saying, I'm only a sign. This idea of only being a sign, that's the birur v'zichuch hamata. What's the birur v'zichuch hamata? We said, should we not feel it? Davening is about the person completely transforming themselves and being completely bottled to Hashem, especially when we come to Shemoneh Esrei, the person's ka'av to come a mother, like a servant standing before his master, is completely nullified. That is one meaning of Anos Simonum Ba'alma. Another meaning is Vasheni. A second meaning is it is Muvdal Amayla Mekula. I am only a sign, meaning in comparison to everybody else, I am way above I only have to do with like Hashem. I'm just completely joined with Hashem, and I'm beyond the world. Torah has that type of power, that's revelation from above. It's only a sign for Hashem. It has nothing to do with this world. Adsha Amru, to such a degree was the Rashbi so identified with Hashem himself that they said, Man Pnei Adam Avaya, that Talmidim, the Rashbi said, who is the face of the master of Avaya? Rab Shimon ben Yochai. This Rab Shimon ben Yochai, he was so without being on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's Eved Melech Melech. He was completely bottled and therefore completely identified with Hashem. That complete identification with Hashem, that he could be called the master, the face of Avaya, that is the idea of Torah, the idea of coming from above to below. This is also, by the way, similar to it says when Mashiach comes, they will say Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish before the Tzaddikim. Anyway, line 22, last paragraph on the page, and to bring also in from the well-known Lord, that Rabbi Hillel Parisher, Chassid and Tzemach Tzedek, related that he heard from the Chassid of Zalman Zezman, Shem Rabbeinu Azakin, in the name of the Alter Rebbe. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai existed in a plane where there was no destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. There was no, he was, by him, it was just as if the Beis Hamikdash was still standing. The Rebbe asked an obvious question. We know that the Rashbi had to hide in the cave for 12, 13 years. How can you say there was no Golus? So he says in the parentheses, Ma, the top of page Yud, the reason why the Rashbi had to hide in a cave for all those years, it's only because the Torah teaches us that one is not supposed to rely on a miracle. So he was doing it just because the din is that a person shouldn't rely on a miracle, but not because he was actually afraid that anything in Golus can harm him, because nothing can harm Rashbi in Golus. He was beyond the whole idea of Golus. And the Rashbi also drew this down, this idea of being beyond Golus to everybody. Even someone that felt within himself the idea of the destruction, when that person came to the Miron, the place of the Rashbi's resting place, on the day of Simcha, meaning a Lag BaOmer, the entire idea of exile did not apply. Like it says over the story in the Pri Eitz Chaim concerning the saying of Nachem. And this is there's a story about someone that used to say every single day in the year, he used to say, Ram Alevi, a Talmud Arizal, used to say Nachem in a certain bracha, I think in benching. And then it didn't make a difference, even days that you don't say Tachma. He used to say the tefillah that we say in Shemoneh Esrei, on Mincha, on Tisha B'Av, we say an insert over there, Nachem, by Boin Yerushalayim. He used to say it, I think, in a certain part of benching. And when he was Lag BaOmer by the Rashbi, he said it as well. And he got the Arizal said to that person in the name of Rab Shimon ben Yochai, tell this person, tell the student of yours, why is he saying Nachem in the day of my rejoicing? So the point is that we find that by the Rashbi, those that are connected with him, they are also beyond Golus. They cannot say a Golus type of tefillah. So he says in line 7, until from this we come to the literal idea of the Geula. Gula mitzvah shlema de Mashiach, the true and complete redemption through Mashiach. Then will be fulfilled the promise. Then Avai will be a king on the earth. That day, Hashem will be one, and His name will be